the pistol does exactly that, right? Those bullets coming out of the pistol at, 1,200 feet per second do exactly that. They will puncture, perforate, penetrate, separate, lacerate. It gives me an advantage as far as being able to transfer energy to a specific target, especially at distances that I can't do with the blade. At extreme close distances, the blade is very difficult to contend against with somebody that actually knows how to use it.
This is Beer 30, a podcast that connects badass people and shares their experiences over a cold one. Kick back, relax, and enjoy the show. And if you like it, don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Let's get started with today's episode.
Welcome to another episode of Beer 30, brought to you by UF Pro. I'm your host, Tanner Denton, and today the show has been heroically saved by the dauntless David Acosta Jr. Dave, thanks for making the time to be on the show today. How are you doing?
I'm great, man. Honored to be here. Appreciate you.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah, I'm happy to finally get you on the podcast. For anyone that doesn't know, Dave and I have worked together before multiple times. So this is not our first occasion of being in front of each other and talking about each other. But for those of you that don't know you, Dave, would you like to give anyone any sort of spark notes on what your career has included? I'll start it off and you can sort of correct me or course correct or whatever, but you've been everywhere from patrol to narcotics to SWAT assaulter, and you had a 17-year career and now you're instructing and doing a lot of other stuff. So you want to give the spark notes of whatever I didn't touch on and what you would like to share, what you can share?
Appreciate it. But yeah, you pretty much covered, 20,000 foot view.
Sweet. Well, do you really sort of flow with or like to teach people about certain aspects of or what you have experienced in undercover narcotics or anything like that? Or do you like to take an approach from patrol or anything like that? Or do you just take your experiences of what you've had before and sort of mush it all together in your teachings?
Yeah, a lot of it is a combination of like my collective experience, right? Like, so we as individuals are the sum of our exposure, and our exposure is our training and our experience. There's things that I've experienced that other people haven't, things that I've been exposed to that other people haven't through both training and experience. And I kind of take those lessons and try to incorporate them where they apply, right, to the appropriate crowd. It's not like I'm teaching dudes how to do undercover work, but as it pertains to, teaching what we teach, which is ultimately how to employ violence well, there's a direct correlation to some of the things that I experience, both training and experience, that correlate to what that looks like for people that don't have that lens or that perspective, that haven't experienced it themselves, that don't know it, that doesn't necessarily know what that really looks like. And I try to make sure that when I teach things that are relevant to that I provide that perspective for, the student audience.
Okay. When you are teaching, are you teaching through your own company? Are you teaching through another company? What's going on there?
All of the above.
Yeah.
I'm partnered with some pretty cool dudes, guys I respect and friends with. So I have my own company, obviously, Allegiance Defense Solutions, that I started a few years back. And, I've taught for many companies, but I predominantly teach right now and I'm partnered with Achilles Heel Tactical and MTAC Shooting. So
a lot of UF Pro guys and listeners are familiar with AHT since we've done work together before, UF Pro and AHT. We've done a lot of pros guide videos before and taught about pistol and rifle and basics and stuff like that, basically fundamentals and everything. But
Right.
What we would really like to do and what we've sort of talked about before is UF Pro and David Acosta Jr. doing some stuff together. You want to shed a little insight of what we've talked about?
Talked about just kind of showing like our take, if you will, on what the combatives world looks like for us.
Is that what you specialize in? Is combatives?
Man, I don't like to think that I specialize in anything.
Okay.
People say
Very
that
humble.
I specialize in things, but it's if you truly approach things from a mixed modal approach and realize there's a lot of things you should be good at, the minute you dive into specializing at one thing, if that one thing isn't truly like your specialty, like if that's not 90% of what you're doing out on, whatever your field of work is, it could cost you. And, there's guys that agree with that, guys that don't. I'm one of those dudes. It's like from looking at, again, just through my lens of law enforcement and what I was doing in law enforcement, you can't specialize in just one thing. You've got to be good at a myriad of things, right? Like from a patrol perspective, right? Like depending on where you work and who you work for, I mean, goodness gracious, you go from being a social worker to a defense attorney, trying to pick apart a case, right? To a detective where you're doing an objective analysis and investigation of specific facts and circumstances, right? Relative to a call that you get dispatched to. The next minute you may not, it may need to be the Mario Andretti of the world as you drive really fast chasing dudes. And then, seconds later, you need to be Usain Bolt, the track star. And then, several seconds after that, you need to be Conor McGregor. And then shortly thereafter, you need to be, Ben Steger. So like it goes across the gamut of having to be good at a lot of things. Obviously, we have to weigh out what do we do most, what is most consequential, right? Like, and we kind of got to just look at those things on an individual basis, right? Like guys working patrol, they need to be well-rounded in that regard. So just kind of like a summary of how I kind of look at things, right? Like just from my exposure, you got to be good at a myriad of different things.
Yeah. I've seen you teach a lot. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we've worked a lot together. We've shot a bunch of videos and stuff together. And I've come to the conclusion that from my side, that you are the deadliest guy that I've ever met in my entire life. And absolutely on the low vis / like undercover side of things. I mean, that I have never met anyone that I respect more and think I would much rather just kill myself than go up against you. And when it comes to that, so what drew you to the pursuit of going more on the low vis side as opposed to like going overt tactical helmet and plate carrier type of stuff that a lot of other dudes think is super cool and want to specialize in that?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. The dudes that I surround myself with are all much, much better at those things than I am. So when I go to training with my guys in my circle, I'm the bottom of the totem pole, if you will. And every time I go train with, my instructors, my teachers, my coaches, my mentors, they remind me how much I don't know. So I appreciate that. Having said that, what drives me into the low vis side is just really, as the majority of where I spent my career was on the low vis side. I spent more time not wearing a uniform than I did wearing a uniform. I spent a lot of time, being a narc, working in narcotics. Did that. I'm, kind of the plainclothes side, modified uniform, if you will. And then I did that for a longer time in an undercover capacity. So having like that being my world for, a decade kind of shaped the way I view things when it comes to teaching and what I think is most applicable and appropriate for civilians specifically, right? Like there's a lot of correlation between what I was doing then to how that works to sudden violent encounters that civilians are looking to train for. So I think there's a direct correlation, as I said before, and that relevance is what I'm trying to bring to their perspective.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, definitely on the civilian side, it's like, I'm absolutely not knocking any civilians that train in full kit, overt kit, I guess I should say. But civilians that are training, I think, should definitely have more of a realistic thought before you go out and start training on a certain thing. Because if you're training something that you may, how do I word this? If you ever do use this, it will more than likely be after you use another thing. In this case would be, let's just say, from concealment or plain clothes or covert stuff rather than helmet, plate carrier, nods, rifle, stuff like that. So whenever, you're teaching, whenever I've seen you teach more of the plain clothes side of things, or pistol combatives is the more recent thing that I've seen you teach, and you're teaching about pistols and blades. It's just, I couldn't believe that I hadn't thought about taking or training in something like the way that you did and how well you do it. That's how I was just so blown away. I was like, I can't believe that this guy's so good at covert things and with blades. And speaking of blades, like I said, you're incredibly deadly with them. How does a person get so deadly deadly with a blade like you would a pistol. Because with pistols, whenever you go to the range, there's drills that'll work multiple fundamentals on the range. I mean, we can name so many here, bill drills like 221s, Mozambiques, drawing from concealment over what, I mean, we can go on and on.
Yeah.
Is it sort of the same thing with blades, or is it, I mean, totally different?
No, I mean, principally speaking, when we look at training, irrespective of the modality, whether it's precision rifle, carbine, stick work, blade work, empty hands, striking, grappling, principally speaking, we approach them the same way, right? Like you have drills that are intended to develop specific skills relevant to how that looks in whatever your engagement or your encounter may look like, that develop specific attributes, everything from coordination to draw strokes, etc. When it comes to blade stuff, like I'd say the most useful stuff that I've ever learned relevant to utilizing a blade has always been from SWAT Kali. It's one of the systems that I currently train in right now and have been training for several years. But when it comes to the blade stuff specifically, that has been the most useful system that I've found. And I've trained in several. Early on, I got into Filipino martial arts and Jeet Kune Do concepts back when I was in high school, getting introduced to a lot of stuff there on the Filipino martial arts side, which is obviously a blade-based system, sword-based systems, which oftentimes we see, drawn out with a stick instead of a sword. But nonetheless, a lot of the blade stuff, or I should say 90% of the 100% of the blade stuff that I find useful actually comes from SIOC. So as far as approaching the modality, like it's a very systematic, very progressive, feeder-based system. When I say feeder, I mean in any martial art, right? This is how it goes in any martial art. In order to learn how to defend against a thing, you first have to learn how to use the thing or how to do the thing, right? Like, for instance, if someone said like, hey, I want to learn how to get out of a rear naked choke. And it's like, okay, well, first let's teach you how to do it the right way. So you know how to apply it. And then you can kind of destruct it, right? You can reverse engineer it and deconstruct what that looks like by having a deep understanding of how to do it well. If your understanding of how to use it, right, how to do it offensively as the feeder is skewed, then the application of, defending against it, becomes skewed as well.
Yeah. I've heard that a lot, actually. In order to, I guess, correctly defend against something, you need to know how to apply, or like you said, be on the offensive side of it before you try to be on the defensive side of it. I've heard that a lot. Is that pretty common in basically all of like martial arts and everything like that?
Yeah, it comes down to who you're training for, right? Like if you watch, CCTV footage or body cam footage and you watch a fight, well, if you truly break it down, you look at like who the opposition was. If like you have to ask yourself, were they skilled or unskilled? Like, do I want to train to be good against the unskilled guy, or do I want to train to be good against the skilled, formidable adversary? Right? Like, so like just fundamentally speaking, if I want to be good at a thing, then I have to be training for, appropriately towards that guy that is well trained, right? Like I wouldn't go training to fight, whoever you think the best UFC fighter is. I'm not going to go training, the modality of training that I use for developing skill relevant to that fight. It would make no sense to go train with less formidable fighters than that individual himself.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's just a principle, right? Like, who are you training for, right? Like you have to ask yourself that, because that will truly outline the path for what good training looks like, what appropriate training looks like.
Yeah. I've a little bit backwards here. We were talking about blades. I've heard you refer to your non-dominant hand, so what would be my left hand, as your other strong hand.
Yeah.
Could you explain the reasoning for that terminology? I had never heard it before you had ever said it, and I was like, oh. And then you explained it to me, but I would like you to explain it to the listeners because it was so fascinating to me.
Yeah. So that's a SIOCism, right? I adopted that directly from SIOC. We have our dominant hand, which is our strong hand. And the first time I ever heard it used was at training. And they're like, hey, we're going to do an other strong hand draw. And I was like, what? So it was other strong hand. And when we think about things deeply, we realize that words matter. If I always treat my non-dominant hand, right, like my weak hand or my support hand, then it'll always be that. But if I genuinely look at it from the perspective of trying to make it my other strong hand, right, like my training the emphasis of my training is to have two good strong hands, then I'm better than my evil clone, so to say, that has one strong hand and a weak hand, right? So you just become a more formidable individual. Again, so like I learned that directly from SIOC. That's a SIOCism, if you would, SIOCism. And, it's just with the intent of getting this hand to be as good as it can be. But if you always treat it like a weak hand, like a support hand, it'll always be that. But if you make the conscious effort and the deliberate practice of making it as good as this strong hand, you'll be 10 times, stronger with this than you would be if you didn't treat it that way.
Are you doing what I've heard a lot of people do, is brush your teeth with your left hand rather than always brushing with your right hand?
No, I mean, early on, I did some of those things, and you do stuff with the right hand, do it with the left hand just to see. But like when it comes to training, we do stuff with the strong hand, and then we do the same exact thing with the other strong hand, and we develop that skill.
If you could only carry one of these in your daily life, for whatever reason, blade or pistol, and why? I know this is a loaded question. I know.
Where am I going? Like, what?
Right.
Drop off on the Amazon?
Yeah. So let's just say daily concrete jungle.
Yeah, a pistol.
Pistol. Why?
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, if you think about the pistol is, principally speaking, both are cutting tools. If we define a cutting tool as anything that's going to puncture, perforate, penetrate, separate, or lacerate, the pistol does exactly that, right? Those bullets coming out of the pistol at 1,200 feet per second do exactly that. They will puncture, perforate, penetrate, separate, lacerate. It gives me an advantage as far as being able to transfer energy to a specific target, especially at distances that I can't do with the blade. There's obviously disadvantages to that, but the advantage is my ability to cover ground quickly, right? Like I don't have to physically go there. I can send these there because they're projectile based. So having said that, at face value, I would definitely jump on a pistol.
Is there another time, since you asked, is there another scenario or location or something like that where you would pick a blade rather than a pistol?
It's tough. Like, I don't like the binary this or that. Like, for me, it's both. For me, it's both, right? For me, it's both. And the reason I say that is because at extreme close distances, the blade is very difficult to contend against with somebody that actually knows how to use it, right? There's things that we can do as the feeder that you can't do with a pistol, so to say. The pistol is easier for the opposition to grab, right? That helps them in their endeavor to, thwart the attack, if you will, where it's not as easy to control the blade. It's a little easier to control the pistol in certain regards. Again, obviously the individual yielding it, the opposition all has a say in how they go. So it's not absolute. A lot of guys like to draw definitive lines, black or white, right? We typically see that, especially in the training world. But for me, it's not one or the other. It's both, right? And both have their appropriate, contextual appropriateness. There's times where a blade is a phenomenal choice, right? Extreme close distances. And it's intended to improve my position, right? It's not like the end all be all. It's intended to feed opportunities to go to the better weapon, if that makes sense, right? Like one of my mentors, TTK, Tom Kyer, always references and talks about, especially Harley Elmore, Tuan Harley Elmore, always references it as well, is, better weapon, better position, which is obviously a SIOC thing.
Yeah. I guess to wrap things up, if there's one thing you'd want people to get more time on in training, whether it be officers, civilians, military, whatever it may be, what would you recommend? Yeah, I mean, because we always come across various, ranges of skill and what people have or have not trained, but have you been able to see anything that has been carried amongst all three of those officers, civilians, and military where you don't see a whole lot of training, whether that be for a real world scenario or survival scenario or just anything along those lines, or even home defense scenario? A lot of people don't want to train in that because they don't really think about it. They just think about the cool guy. I'm going to grab my rifle and I'm going to start blasting away.
Yeah. That's a tough one, man. What I would say is this, right? My physicality, my mentality, that gets past every checkpoint, right?
Yeah.
Those aren't things you can necessarily take away from me in those scenarios, if you will. We should overdevelop those things. A lot of times people are looking for the shortcut, and the shortcut is how do I make myself more formidable? I don't have time to train striking and grappling and blades and pistols and all this stuff, violence related. So I'm going to, like, what's the shortcut? Like, give me the pistol. That's the shortcut, right? You can't take it everywhere. And it's not always applicable.
Yeah.
And like, you're literally just a walking holster if you don't develop the skill that, that denotes that you can actually keep it, right? And actually use it. So I would say, like, people tend to focus on the shortcut. People tend to focus on the hardware as if that's the end all be all. But the reality is it's not, right? Like, if we think about it, big picture, there's plenty, like, again, my own personal experience, there's plenty of times where I'm going into, I would go into a dangerous scenario. And again, not trying to tell war stories, but like, just broad picture, right? Like, I always had my mentality with me. I always had my physicality with me. Like, that software, if you will, needs to be constantly overdeveloped. Like, the foundation of all of our skill sets always come down to those two things. If I don't have the mental capacity, first and foremost, like, let's imagine, who would you say, Tanner, is like the most physical dude, like physical, like total unit, total specimen? Anyone in the world?
I mean, probably a little fake, but The Rock. Let's just say The Rock.
Okay. Let's say you had the strength and the physicality of The Rock, right?
Yeah.
If you had the mentality of the typical scared nerd who's scared of his own shadow, like, what good does that do you?
Right. Yeah.
Right. All looks, no actual go. Right. And I've seen that. I've seen dudes that literally, I mean, total specimens, units. It's like, dude, if I had that dude's physicality, I'd be crushing people. Right. I'd be crushing dudes. Bad dudes, obviously. And
Right.
On the flip side, like, as soon as stuff hit the fan, nowhere to be found. Right. Nowhere to be found. All that physicality for nothing. Right. On the flip side, who would you say is like the most mentally tough, like, greatest mindset? Pick any celebrity, anybody, whoever. Mental
David
tough.
Acosta Jr.
No. Yeah. But like, normally when I ask that question, people will say like someone like David Goggins, or like name, some big name that's, has, celebrity style presence that, preaches and teaches and writes books about mindset or mentality.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you have all that, right, but you don't have the physicality to go with it, right? Like, if you had that mentality, but you're a quadriplegic, like, how formidable are you actually?
Right. Yeah.
Right? So it's those two things that I think really act as the foundation, the balance of both the mental capacity and then the physical capacity. And then I think after that is really just the software component, right? Like what do you need to be good at? And then overdevelop whatever that is. The reason I say overdevelop it is because most people will try to train to a goal, to a marker, and then they hit that marker and they fall off, right? It's like, on game day, I don't know who my opposition is. There's certain assumptions I don't want to make, and there's certain assumptions I do want to make. Safe assumptions are like, I don't want to underestimate my opponent, so I'm always going to assume that he's more skilled than I am, technically. I'm always going to assume that he's a better fighter than I am. I'm always going to assume he's stronger than I am. I'm always going to assume he's smarter than I am. So that kind of, that mentality, so to say, that presupposition, that assumption is safe in that it keeps you, if you're genuinely doing it, it keeps you from underestimating your opponent, So that would be a safe assumption. And those are the things that we talk about. And these are the things I try to correlate in classes, like, who are you training for, right? What are you training for? Who are you trying to go against? Who's your competition? Who's your opposition? Who's the enemy? And then attack it that way, right? Like, look at those things and ask yourself what makes the most sense. How would you logically approach this if you had to bet your life on this game?
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, dude, it's just, you're too impressive for me to relate to sometimes, because it's just like, dude, like, how does he think of that stuff? Or how does he think that way just naturally? And I mean, obviously it's because, like we just talked about, you've developed your software. And so that's obviously something I need to work on. But I really appreciate you coming on, Dave, and I'm sure everyone else does. And for those of you that have not checked Dave out, David Acosta Jr., he is a fantastic instructor. Like I've said, if you're in the States, you're absolutely able to look him up and get some of his classes. I highly encourage you to. And for everyone that has listened and or watched, thank you so much for listening and watching. I appreciate it, and UF Pro appreciates it. And look out for the next episodes on all of the platforms that you're able to listen and or watch.
Ron, appreciate you, Tanner. Thank you.
So there you have it. This concludes another episode of UF Pro's Beer 30 podcast. Want more information about UF Pro and tactical clothing for professional end users? Then please visit ufpro.com or follow our channels on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.